Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about language paper 2 section B. Paper 2 of course is the non-fiction paper. So here you're going to be spending 45 minutes at least writing one of the non-fiction forms. So it might be a newspaper article, it might be a speech. The link between all of these forms is the fact that they are based in some kind of fact. So they're not made up stories, some kind of factual knowledge. That is the common link between them all. Let's jump straight in, metaphorically speaking, of course. So today's level up challenge, very quick and easy one, but very useful in both of the English language exams, knowing this distinction and being able to write about it confidently and accurately. So just try and jot down the difference between explicit and implicit information in a text. We'll go over it at the end of the video. Just before we go into our first tip on how to pick up more marks in this exam, can I just say that if you are finding these videos useful so far, please take a moment to subscribe. It would mean everything to know that the channel is supported, the videos are useful, and you are finding them helpful in your revision studies. So please take a moment to subscribe. You just need to set up a Gmail address. It's completely free if you don't already have a Gmail address. Takes a couple of minutes. Right, off we go then. First top tip is choose the question very carefully in this exam. You don't need to just consider which of the two questions available you like. You also need to consider which of the two forms of writing you are best at. Let's look at this in a bit more detail, what I mean. So you will have learnt by now, or certainly by the time you come to do your exam, all of the main non-fiction forms. You would have covered how to write a formal letter, maybe a job application letter, a speech, a newspaper article, a diary entry, etc., etc. You should also know then, if you have done some of these in class, maybe done a few for homework and had them marked, you should have a sense of which ones you are better at. Certain people seem to get higher marks writing diary entries. Other people seem to prefer the highly formulaic kind of structure of newspaper articles. It depends. So what I would suggest when you're in the exam, you read through the two questions available. Have a look at the form first. If you've always got high marks writing speeches and a speech is there, even if you don't like the idea of the question about the speech initially, it might be a good idea to pick the speech. You know that that is what you are best at. And the last bullet point on the slide here, you do have bullet points on the exam paper that are designed to help you. So if you had a form of a speech, which you quite like, you know you like speeches, but the question's a bit, not too sure what I would write about, then go to the bullet points firstly. There's probably going to be 2 bullet points there to help you. Write about those first. That should then prompt another idea or another couple of ideas of your own that you can also add. Top tip number 2 is to do a quick gap analysis. If you don't know what gap is, you've never heard it before, don't worry, I'll run through it quickly and there will be a forthcoming video that goes into it in more detail. Very simply though, a gap analysis is these 3 things: the genre of your non-fiction form of writing, for example a speech, the audience at which your form of writing is aimed at, your target audience. That is essential to know. You might be asked to write a non-fiction form to your best friend. You might be asked to write to a member of parliament. You can see those 2 audiences would make the style and the tone, the formality or informality of the language completely different. So it's essential that you bear that in mind in your planning and in your writing. And the P of gap analysis is the purpose. So you may be writing to argue, you may be writing to explain, to inform, to persuade, etc. Really essential that you also bear the purpose in mind. Okay, so you can see a speech there to your local council with the purpose to inform. Fair enough. You know where you're headed with that kind of speech. The last bullet point though there just gives you an example of how different it would be if you had a completely different gap analysis. So you're writing a letter to your best friend and you're persuading your best friend to do something, maybe come and stay with you in the summer holidays or something like that. So can you see that the gap analysis will just send your thoughts and send your planning in the right direction before you even put pen to paper with your planning? It takes 10 seconds at most to do a gap analysis quickly in your head, but really, really worthwhile step. Tip number 3, at the least be familiar with the mark scheme for this exam. There are 2 AOs and you should have some kind of idea at least of what you are being asked to write. It's particularly important with the non-fiction exam because there are so many different forms of writing, okay? But as I say in the bullet points here, the mark scheme is the same no matter which form you choose. So if you're familiar with the mark scheme, again, it just gives you that bit of confidence, bit of reassurance that you're writing the right kind of language, the right kind of stuff. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you the mark scheme for AO5. And just notice, I've already said one of my tips is to do a quick gap analysis in your head. Just notice how often audience and purpose are actually mentioned in the mark scheme. There is a link there. If you Google that, that will take you to the right page on the Edexcel exam website. You can simply replace Edexcel with AQA. We'll do exactly the same thing. I'll put a link to the web page in the description also. Once you get to the home page, you should find a tab or a subheading on the home page, exam materials. You click on that and then you can access all of the past papers, which are really useful. So AO5, audience and purpose, tone and style, audience and purpose. If you look through, even from level 1 up to level 5, it's clear that the exam boards really value writing for a specified audience really clearly and writing for a deliberate purpose really clearly. So if you can do that, you keep your gap analysis at the front of your mind throughout your planning, throughout your writing. It's a very good way to progress up through the mark scheme here. AO6 is spelling, punctuation, grammar, and use of vocabulary. So one thing I just wanted to point out, if you look up at level 5 here at the bottom, it says rare spelling errors do not detract from overall meaning. So what that is saying is that you can make spelling mistakes and still get full marks. You could still get 16 marks for SPAG and have spelling mistakes in there. The exam boards do not expect your spelling to be perfect. As long as it's clear what you mean, even if you've spelt the odd word incorrectly, you can still get full marks. Okay, number 4, planning is crucial. I've put a past question at the bottom of this slide here, which basically says, write a newspaper article about how music affects people. Okay, how music affects people. Hopefully you can see from that example question how crucial planning is. That question is very, very broad, isn't it? It could mean people anywhere in the world. It could mean any kind of music, any genre of music at all. So this is purposeful from the exam boards. They are going to give you general questions, just like in paper 1, section B, the creative writing, so that you can adapt your knowledge to that question. They're not going to put a question which would be, let me think off the top of my head, write a newspaper article about drum and bass DJs in Brighton between 1998 and 1999. You see, having that specific a question would be impossible for most GCSE students. So therefore, the questions have to be very general in their phrasing. Planning then becomes even more important. You do your gap analysis, that focuses your planning a lot. You plan then around the bullet points. You can see here we have 3 bullet points which are helping you structure your newspaper article. And then hopefully once you've fleshed out a few ideas around those 3 bullet points that are there to help you, that will prompt another idea of your own, another 2 ideas of your own. That's kind of the quantity that you're probably looking at. Number 5, you're going to be spending at least 45 minutes on writing this newspaper article, speech, etc. 45 minutes, maybe up to an hour. That's a long time to stay focused on one question. So I've got a few tips as to how to make sure you can stay focused all the way through this piece of writing. Firstly is you now have a detailed plan. Oh, fantastic. Don't ignore the plan once you've written it and start writing. Keep going back to your plan. Tick off each point on your plan once you've completed it. It makes sure that you haven't wandered off topic. And as I've said there, believe me, it does happen. You do read letters that start applying for a job at the local garden centre on a Saturday and then wander off into a lovely preamble about how you've never worked in a garden centre before but used to ride a horse a lot. You see what I mean? Sometimes you just sort of read things in letters that shouldn't be there. The best way to avoid that is to have a clear, detailed, logically structured plan. Tick off each point as you go. Be very clear and confident that your plan all addresses the question specifically before you start. And the examiner is going to see that you've made a detailed plan. They're going to see that you have logically structured your work. So then it's much, much easier for them, even though they've never met you, they might not know that you're fantastic at English or that you've really, really improved at English. They don't know. But if they see that detailed plan, they can see that you've been methodical in your approach to the question and detailed, hopefully, in your response. So what you have written, there are lots of different forms that you can write for this exam, this section of this exam, but what you have written should do these things. These are probably quite useful to pause the video at some point and jot down. So you should have addressed each of the suggested bullet points. They're there to help you. Why would you ignore them? You should include at least a couple of your own ideas. You should have featured all of the structural and generic conventions of that particular form. So what I mean by that, if we take the example of a newspaper article, you should have a headline, you should have a byline, you should have an interview, you should have answered the 5 W's and a how. Yeah. So in class, you will learn all of these structural features for each of the non-fiction forms. You should make sure that all of them are in your writing on exam day. Level up challenge answers. So a very simple statement at the end there. I don't know if you managed to express this in fewer words, but that is one way of expressing this difference. Explicit information is clearly explained. Normally only has one meaning, an explicit statement. Whereas if a statement is implicit or has been implied, then it's just hinted at, it's just suggested. It might have more than one meaning. An implicit statement might mean something completely different for one person as it does to another. All right, so I've got an example here. An explicit statement, these are 2 statements around the same topic really, raining, but explicitly you could say it had just stopped raining. There's no real interpretation there. It means that it's been raining and now it's not. Okay, that's it. Whereas an implicit statement, which really means the same thing, so the road glistened like a mirror, it was raining, but now the clouds have passed over, the sun's come out on the wet road. That could mean all sorts of things, couldn't it? It could mean it's just stopped raining. It could also mean, oh, the road is a mirror. Is that a mirror to another world where it never rains, or another world where it always rains? I don't know. But immediately you can start reading into the implied or suggested meanings. And just a little exam tip. So in the exam, really important to know the difference between explicit statements and implicit statements. Normally, explicit has one clear meaning, implicit can have multiple meanings. And an exam tip then, how would you use this as an exam? Well, if you're asked for explicit information in an exam, the best thing to do, and what you're really being asked, is to copy quotations. That's fine. Just make sure if it's not your words, it's lifted from an extract, just put them in quotation marks to show that. If you're asked what's implied, well, then you should write in your own words, because you are talking about your own subjective interpretation of that statement, what it means to you, or what different things it could mean to you, hopefully in specific relation to the question. Right, our 10-minute revision exercises. Write down 4 structural features a newspaper article must have. If you don't know how to do that, I mentioned some earlier in the video, but if you don't know how to do that, then watch out for the upcoming videos on Language Paper 2, Section B. And then deforest. What are the deforest persuasive devices? Try and jot them down. If you don't know, again, don't worry. I'll be going over it in a future video. If you think deforest is the place is closest to your home that has lots of big trees, fair enough, but you probably want to watch the video that's coming up. And again, once you know what these things are, you can add them into your revision folder. So, quick summary. Choose your question very carefully. It's not just the question you are considering here, it is also the form of writing that you're best at. A quick gap analysis is so helpful and takes 10 seconds to do in your head. Don't even need to write it down. Can write it down if you want to, not essential. Quick enough just to remember. Be familiar with the mark scheme. It mentions audience and purpose very often. Planning is crucial because there are so many different forms. You must make sure you've got all the relevant structural features, all the bullet points that are on the exam paper, plus your own ideas. Quite a lot to consider here, so make sure you do a really solid, detailed plan. And then when you're writing for a long time, you can keep coming back to that plan, even tick off each thing as you go, and you won't wander off topic. You will stay focused on the question. Okay, that's it. Really hope as ever you found this video useful. If you did, take a moment to subscribe, please. Means an awful lot to have your support. So start building up your revision a little bit now. If you've done 2 minutes or 5 minutes learning a quotation or two in the past, or having a little go at the revision exercises in this video, then try and go for 10 minutes tomorrow night. Interested in online tutoring? If you think I can give you more help in the run-up to your exams, then please ask an adult to get in touch. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. See you on the next video.